There are countless phobias that plague and taunt the human mind. From irrational fears such as arachnophobia, the acute fear of spiders, a widely experienced phenomenon, to the more unusual of phobias. Philophobia, for instance, leaves sufferers in fear of falling in love or forging close relationships with others. There remains one particular phobia, however, that strikes absolute terror into the hearts and minds of its victims, and this is the dreaded coulrophobia, a specific term used for the fear of clowns. Coulrophobia has long been the inspiration behind films and books, notably the hugely successful novel-turned-film It by Stephen King, which highlights and exploits the true core of phobia, featuring the sinister killer clown Pennywise, hell-bent on luring and subsequently murdering children. Quite literally the stuff of nightmares. Perhaps the frighteningly heavy, ostentatious makeup a clown possesses goes some way in installing this all-consuming fear of clowns into people. Maybe it is triggered by negative encounters the sufferer experienced in childhood that brought coulrophobia about. Whatever the root, there is one standout case that truly heightens the grotesque aversion: the horrendous activities of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Born on March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, to Polish and Danish parents, Gacy's childhood was far from happy and contented. Gacy's father was a violent, nasty drunk who would regularly and savagely beat him and his siblings, as well as their mother. Growing up, Gacy realized he had very strong homosexual urges, a factor of himself that he despised. It caused him terrific mental anguish, and it is thought this was the catalyst for his heinous murders, earning him the infamous alias Killer Clown. John Wayne Gacy, a twice-married and divorced building contractor, to the unsuspecting eye, was a perfectly decent pillar of the community. Well-liked, envied and respected to the extent that the husband and father regularly organised community gatherings, and it was then that Gacy began performing as Pogo the Clown for charities and children's parties. Even to this day, those who knew Gacy, or at very least thought they knew Gacy, struggle to come to terms accepting the fact that man they liked and trusted was in actuality a monster of the highest order, capable of the most repugnant crimes. Between 1972 and 1978, in Cook County, Illinois, Gacy claimed the lives of at least 33 teenage boys and young men. Carrying out these appalling murders, Killer Clown Gacy would lure his victims to his Norwood Park ranch house on the promise of work within his construction firm, where he would brutally garrote them with a device of his own making, before callously burying the motionless bodies around the grounds of his property. The boys were subjected to depraved sexual assaults at the killer clown's hands, prior to having the life squeezed out of them. In their final moments, they must have endured unimaginable pain and horror. Back in 1968, Gacy was actually convicted of the sexual assault of 2 teen boys, and as a result, he was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for his crime. However, in the summer of 1970, he was released on parole, only to be arrested once again the following year, accused of sexually assaulting a teenage boy. Frustratingly, when the trial began, the boy failed to appear, and the charges against Gacy were consequently dropped, rendering him free to indulge in his passion for dark and deadly pursuits. It is certainly fair to say Gacy was a real-life Pennywise. His clown makeup, although self-taught, was often finished with sharp corners painted at the edges of his mouth, defying the softened, rounded version professional clowns ordinarily favour, which made for a chilling sight, as photographs of Gacy revelling in his Pogo alter ego prove. There is something horrific about pictures of Gacy dressed in his clown attire. This seemingly jolly, charitable fellow concealing some of the most shocking secrets that would turn the stomachs of most of us. One cannot begin to imagine the panic these boys and young men must have felt. The helplessness of the realization that an escape from this possessed, perverted beast was impossible. By the grace of God, some of the killer clown's victims did manage to escape his deviant clutches. David Cram, a young employee of Gacy, had lived with him for a brief period. Late one night, Gacy crept up on Cram, dressed in his full clown costume, complete with painted face, where he tricked Cram into trying on a pair of real handcuffs. Gacy then attempted to rape Cram, who made the life-saving decision to fight back, a sudden impulse that would save his life. Cram managed to escape the murderous clown, but the outcome, as we now know, would have been altogether tragically different had he not made that decision to escape. Gacy's name will permanently be associated with the abhorrent atrocities man has the potential to unleash on his fellow human, his legacy destined to evoke feelings of mistrust and anguish into anybody who chooses to research this horribly complicated, twisted creature. A former KFC franchise manager, a candidate for the Democrat Party, the owner of a successful construction company. All these things pale in significance. They fall by the wayside in comparison to the thing that he was, that he will always remain, a grotesquely evil killer clown, responsible for brutally snuffing out the lives of innocent young men whilst all the time maintaining the guise of a well-mannered, salt-of-the-earth do-gooder. John Wayne Gacy was finally caught in 1978 when 15-year-old boy Robert Peist went missing. Police received news that Robert was last seen by his mother by a local store before he had made his way to meet Gacy to discuss the possibility of securing employment. Following an extensive police search in and around the grounds of Gacy's home, evidence of his involvement in countless repulsive acts, including murder, were laid bare for all to see. Police concluded that the killer clown's first murder victim was that of Timothy McCoy back in 1972. Following a short jury deliberation, John Wayne Gacy was found guilty of committing 33 murders, making him one of the most ruthless and prolific serial killers in US history. Gacy was handed 12 death sentences and 21 natural life sentences. Requesting a final meal of his beloved KFC, 12 fried shrimp, French fries, and a pound of strawberries, John Wayne Gacy was put to death by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. When asked if he had any last words, the ever-defiant Gacy snarled, "Kiss my ass." A true horror right until the end. Gacy's evil life continues to ignite fear in the minds of many, and probably always will. Eerie self-portraits of Gacy as his Pogo the Clown alter ego can still be viewed. As poignant as they are creepy, they are sure to terrify anyone with the knowledge of the sick, malicious crimes he perpetrated. You don't need to suffer from coulrophobia to experience feelings of severe unease and repulsion of a man who was, in essence, the very face of evil.